Good afternoon, guys. This is going to be a really short video. It's going to just sort of combine two things. Number one, the very wonderful book, I suppose novella, by Leo Tolstoy, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. It's really one of the most celebrated of his works. Basically, well, before I describe that, I'll tell you what the second thing is. And I'm going to combine it with a statement, just a little brief snippet that one of my students wrote as the first line of a submission to me. This is what the student said. When taking a look at what Catholicism is based upon, I have come to the conclusion that followers of Christ are meant to live in an equal and just manner. That seems utterly common sense, doesn't it? It seems like a truism. It's in a way a tautology, isn't it? That goodness, moral life, is that life which is lived in an equal and just manner. And I'm not going to split hairs with the definition of equality or justice. Okay, you can find that anywhere. Plato was the one who first famously took issue with a simplistic notion of justice. In the first book of the Republic, he talks about the case where should I give a lunatic his axe back that he lent me when he comes to my house in a blind fury and asks for the axe, which is, in fact, his. Okay, so I'm going to contrast this with something that is really at the heart of this novella by Tolstoy. It's a reflection on life and death, obviously the death of the titular character, but it's also a reflection, I think more importantly, it's a reflection on the way that we live our lives today. I'm going to isolate one of the first, a passage from the very start of the novella. It reads, "Besides considerations as to the possible transfers and promotions likely to result from Ivan Ilyich's death, the mere fact of the death of a near acquaintance aroused, as usual, in all who heard of it, the complacent feeling that it is he who is dead and not I." Okay, that's really a perfect epitomization of some of the main points that Tolstoy wanted to consider in this novella. Now, I want to take that and use that as a foil to examine the truism the student articulated. How is it that we live a life of equality when, according to Tolstoy, his suggestion is that basically life is a war of all against all? I'm looking at the first part of that passage. Considerations as to the possible transfers and promotions likely to result from Ivan Ilyich's death. Now think about it for a second. If your friend, if someone you knew was dying or died, and this was somebody whose position you were quite possibly a leading contender for, how would you look at their death as opposed to how somebody who didn't stand to benefit from their death would look at them? And of course, it's not just death, is it, that sets up situations like this. If you're in a workplace and a coworker gets pregnant, a coworker gets sick with a very serious illness or disease, it stands, well, do you look at it dispassionately? Do you look at it sympathetically? It's probably a mix of both of those things going on. Life is like this, isn't it? Is it possible then to live a life of equality? Does anyone ever treat others equally? You can look at trivial examples like there's one chocolate left in the box. Oh, I'll give it to this person. A chocolate is trivial. What about the last drink of water as you're lost in the desert? That's a little bit more serious. And then what about the matter that I'm really talking about? Social and economic advantage. Do I care as much for the promotion of my colleague as I care for my own promotion? And don't cop out of this one by saying, well, capitalism works when we look after our own self-interest. So in a way, me looking after my own promotion is better for my neighbor. Well, that's not what my student meant by living in an equal manner. Now, the student wrote this in the context of our reading of Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. And yeah, it sounds great. But how do I live equally with other people? Is it enough to say, you know, black people should be able to use the bathrooms too? When you think about it, there's plenty of bathrooms. Whether black people are in there or not doesn't inconvenience me at all. So is it really noble of me to say, yeah, I believe in desegregation of bathrooms? What if it costs me something? Well, look at the issue of reparations for slavery. Now, I personally don't believe in that. I think things like reparations do people immense harm. Look at the case of the Aboriginals in Canada. Reparations are doing their community an immense disservice. Now, according to a certain line of reasoning, to live equally is to give everybody an equal starting position. That means that those economically disadvantaged should be given a leg up. And that's great if there's an infinite number of legs. But what if their leg up is me getting a leg down? Would I consent to that? Does anyone consent to that? And is that to live equally? What would God want? What did Jesus teach? My contention is that Ivan Ilyich's, I should say the cynicism of Tolstoy in that novella, has a lot of truth to reveal to us. You know, I invite you to read that book. I encourage you to read that book. It's not depressing. It's not. It's really quite interesting, and you know, Tolstoy, his ability to perceive things and to set scenes is always a reward in itself to experience. So think about that, and think about this term, this very basic truism, to live equally. Do any of us do it? Now, it's one thing to not be a road hog. It's one thing to to merge with manners, one from their lane, one from my lane. You know, it's sort of a prisoner's dilemma thing. If I let the next lane through, or let someone from the next lane through, they let someone from my lane through. And we develop a society that functions a bit better because, hey, we're a culture where we believe in merging. We don't fight it out because that would lead to a society of lesser pleasure for everybody overall. Okay, that's one thing. But again, merging, like giving up the last chocolate, is one thing. But when does it come? When it comes into play in the workforce, when it comes to play in the grocery store, there's one steak left. There's one steak that's on sale left. I quickly grab it up before the person behind me can grab it, and I know they want it. When there's one bicycle left on sale at Canadian Tire, or what have you. And when it comes to promotions at work, when it comes to getting the best seat in the movie theater, whatever. Is living a life of equality possible? Do people mean what they say? Do people practice what they preach? Or is this just a sentiment? And in fact, is it perhaps a bad idea? As capitalism, as the capitalistic theory would have you believe. It's a bad idea. So are we supposed to be pragmatic then? Are we supposed to tell young people those ideals are false? That it's not possible, it's not realistic, it has and these ideals of equality and so on have nothing to do with the rest of your life. Is it better to be a pragmatist and build on that, or an idealist and whatever comes out of that is the best possible solution or the best possible kind of life to a people that frankly do not live very well?